all for such a fantastic morning. It's been inspirational for us to listen to you speak, so thank you so much for your time. So I'm a training lead for the Courts Administration Authority. We're undertaking quite a significant change in a software implementation project. We had a question as a group of 3 trainers about how we go about supporting leaders who have found themselves in a leadership position because they're brilliant at their coalface job. So they've been brilliant at their coalface job, they're excellent, they're brilliant human beings. They get promoted and then they get promoted again, and all of a sudden they find themselves leading a group of people through a huge change. So I wanted to know what your top piece of advice would be for those people.
Want me to start? Okay. Top piece of advice would be involve people in decisions that affect them. So if you can instill a value in those leaders who haven't been leaders naturally and might not be that flash at it, which is kind of your implication, if you have a value which is involve people in decisions that affect them, then you have to bring your own staff into the tent. You have to actually tell them what's going on. You have to let them have a say in structure change and reorganisations. You know, a lot flows from that one phrase, in my view. Now, if they are just never going to come to that, because that's just invisible to them, you guys can actually do all sorts of little things to help that happen anyway. So you can work through the people that actually are good leaders to get regular meetings happening, stand-ups, you know, people sharing stuff. And even if they don't come to it naturally, they kind of get swept into a bunch of processes and mechanisms that actually bring everyone together anyway and mean that they have to articulate what's actually going on, because they will know what's going on. They just aren't naturally out there saying it. That's just one approach. I'll leave it there. There's a lot of others. But you can also use that feedback thing that I said to say to them. So they're probably just trying to do the best job they can. They just have, to say to them, when you know stuff from the higher ups, but you don't share it with us, I feel you have to own yourself. I feel a bit lost and in the dark, and I would prefer you to hold regular meetings which actually share full context. That's just one way.
I've just got a question for you just while you're there on the microphone. Is that you said that you change your style to lead people, so you change to get the best out of people and to lead people. How do you do that? Like do you have to be an incredible observer of people and try and spend a significant amount of time trying to work out what it is that makes them tick? And is that part of good leadership?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon it's the hardest thing. So when I first became a manager of people, leader of people, of a team, a zillion years ago, I just found it the hardest thing. To learn to make the hard decisions, but that are the right decisions about people's futures and so on. To learn to have the hard conversations. To learn that you don't need to be liked, you want to be respected. And what that entails. Those lessons are not easy. I was incredibly lucky to get some really good learning and development experiences, actually. Which taught me about me and my style and what I was good at in my leadership style. And some great, what I'd call champions, who tended to be bosses, who told me things like, you don't need to be liked, you just need to be respected. Oh, duh. Right, okay. Opened up a whole new world. And similarly, when you've got bosses who've come up from a technical stream and aren't natural leaders, really good if the organisation broadly can bring in mentors and coaches for them as well. It's another really good way.
Have you found that too, Irma? Getting past the need to be liked, not you personally, because
yes, me personally too. Look, there are a couple of comments I think about what you've just said. I feel really strongly that leaders, I think we're talking about two different things. There's a really good manager who would probably do a lot of the governance and the hierarchy really well. But when we talk about leadership, we're actually talking about all of us. Leadership isn't something that managers naturally have. You can have both, but I think some of the points that Lisa made is that as leaders leading a change, you can actually influence it. But I'm going to make some bolder comments, I think, about what you should expect of someone who's leading that change. Certainly from my perspective, we need to have leaders that have those skills, that at least have the bare minimum of being able to model the right sort of behaviours we're articulating, which we're trying to do through, our capability frameworks, what we expect people to do when they're in those leadership roles. I think that is a fundamental, principle that we need to use, and then we basically recruit, as Lisa said, and you build those skills as you grow people into organisations. If you happen to have someone who's only got the technical skills, you can do all the things that we've talked about, but at the end of the day, they may not have the self-awareness to actually do that. And the fundamental bit for me is you've got to like people. There's a lot of people in leadership roles that don't like talking to people. Fail. It's going to be very difficult, because you won't have that premise that you actually will get that empathy and start to think about what it means for the other person. And it takes a lot of energy,
So what do you do if you've got that situation? If you've got a manager that doesn't actually like people and doesn't lead well, and you're in the public service and you can't shift them on?
Well, what do you do? It never happens in the public service.
No, of course not. Not with you in charge, Emma.
No. They don't like me on some days. I've actually been talking a lot about performance management and development, and that's starting with chief executives. I think we really need to get serious about, firstly, if you're in those roles, we've got to start developing those leaders and saying 50% of your job we're going to actually measure on the outcomes, and 50% is about how you're leading the people. And those of you that are jumping for joy when we negotiate our enterprise agreement will see that we've got a lot of information in there about managing change and transitioning. Why does that sort of stuff get embedded in enterprise agreements? Because people don't see that behaviour in the organisation. So in fact, it's the tail wagging the dog. So my answer to that is we've got to manage them, we've got to help them go on to a path of being a great leader, or a path where they're really good being technical experts. That's it, because we're not going to lead the change if we stick with mediocrity around leadership.
Patty, can I ask you, there was a lot of talk around culture. How do you embed culture into an organisation such as health that is enormous and so different? Every single department within the bigger department of health is incredibly different. How do you do that? It's a very hard thing.
Well, in any big organisation, culture, as Lisa said, and everyone's commented, is fundamental. And it is hard, especially when you've got a great diversity of people involved. However, one of the big things is to focus on the why, which was said before. And in healthcare, the patient or the consumer is fundamental to everyone in healthcare. And to recognise that and build on that, whether it's from the consultant neurosurgeon, the trainee medical officer, the senior nurse, and includes the finance people. And I have heard directly from finance people that they are there to help look after patients. Cleaners, the gardeners, everyone. That's their focus. It's not just about the salary, it's purpose. And to build on that purpose is fundamental.
How do you make them feel that they're all pulling the same rope? How do you connect all of those dots? How do you connect the orderlies and the ladies delivering the flowers to the surgeons?
Well,
and is there a communications gap?
Well, there's, as was said earlier, I think everyone again has said, communication is fundamental. You can't communicate enough and involve people enough in terms of actually understanding why it is what we're doing, and where we're going and how we're going to do it. And that means talking to people. Walk-arounds are important. At all levels, whether they be the CE or to the senior medical, nursing, allied health, administrative people, walk-arounds, talking to people, being approachable, people understanding that you don't know everything and you can't possibly know everything. is also really important.
I liked, Lisa, what you said too, and I thought that could be quite effective in that area. What would you like to stop or change about what you're currently doing? And I think being able to give people in the workforce an option to say, yeah, actually, why are we doing this? It's not effective anymore. That must have been a great tool for you.
I don't know how many times I said it, hey?
Yeah.
And it was beaut. And what can we stop or change? You know, we did things like we changed the default on the printers from colour to black and white and saved 650k a year. You know, duh. And that's just one of the examples of things we did. We did take flowers off the front desk in the office of the main building. We did, you know, little things like that add up. But then you've got the things right at the top, which is always about matching capability to the job, the right person with the right skills and the right job, and being brutally clear about priorities.
Helen, do you think that you were talking obviously a lot about collaboration, which is very important. Do you think, and this is an interesting question, I don't know who wants to answer this, maybe you do, but how do you deal with changes in the public sector, or how can public sector employees deal with changes when there are lots of changes of government? So how do you focus on what is the public policy document if there's so many changes of government?
Well, I think it's a situation that we're all getting used to. And there's no sign. I mean, I'm British, as some of you may have guessed. So when I came to Australia 6 years ago, Australia was leading the way in balmy politics. You're way behind now. I mean, the UK and the US have overtaken you. So it is a sort of feature of our times, I think, and so it's a really important question because it's not something that you can wish away, but it is something that if you've got very good values as a public service and a community of public sector organisations, and you've got clear longer term policy objectives, which I think this workshop is all about, then I think it is possible to steer a course which has that long-term objective, recognising that you're going to be diverted and pushed off course occasionally, but that your job, it seems to me, as public servants, is to be the stability in that change. And
Yeah.
I think I'm not saying that's easy at all, but I do think that is part of the role of the public service. Yes, it's about responding to the government of the day, but often the government of the day doesn't know what it wants.
Yeah.
And some of the longer term issues will be there regardless.
So the leaders have to keep the workforce calm under fire while there's people fronting the media saying there's going to be cost savings and things are going to be different under our watch and things will change and we'll make it all better and there is a new tomorrow and the stars will come out and the rainbow will appear and it's all going to be perfect. You say, just keep working.
And also knowing what your job is as a leader, knowing that part of my job as a leader in a very different context is to just keep away from all of my wonderful academics, a lot of the nonsense that they don't need to know about. It is being that kind of umbrella
filter,
and also then being the person that does speak out. So I think there are different, as Lisa, there are different kinds of leadership for different situations, but there are also different kinds of leadership within different parts of the community or the system, if you want to call it that.
Question from the floor.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by Lisa's journey through various political leaders and being appointed successively by different leaders of different political persuasions, and maybe to share some insights that you can share about what made you successful to be able to make transitions like that and to be selected like that.
Sure, thank you. Well, it was an enormous privilege, and I always thought I lost this sense of privilege once when I had a big failure, which I'm happy to talk about, but basically every day was a privilege. And I've got the enormous respect for politicians. So I worked to 9 cabinet ministers, Brenda Nelson, Julie Bishop, Julia Gillard, Simon Crean briefly, Peter Garrett, Chris Evans, Bill Shorten, Christopher Pine, Simon Birmingham. They were just the cabinet ministers. You know what? Every single one of those people were in the game to make a difference. To make a difference. They came from different, yours will be like this. They came from different value sets, of course, and different perspectives entirely, but they were there to make a difference. And I always felt the trick of being able to work genuinely apolitically and with all those different types was to respect that, but then to learn really quickly, if you could, what their personal styles are. How do they take in information? Amanda Vanstone would take just one of the killer points. So Brendan Nelson wanted every single detail of this really, really long, ornate story, and if you do the psychometrics and you understand, say, Myers-Briggs, you can work out how these people are taking in information, learning. Are they someone who you need to put the key points up the top, or do you need to reach those points through a story and have them down the bottom? Are they visual? Are they written? Are they, and absolutely tune into what they care about. Brendan Nelson cared deeply about keeping the backbench happy, for example. They're all different. So respect what they bring outside just the policies they bring. And then when you got my phrase to my staff, history starts the day a new minister starts. History starts the day a new minister starts. I couldn't believe it that in that kind of interregnum when Gillard became Prime Minister in 2010 and the election in 2010, Simon Crean tried to undo stuff that she'd done and she was now Prime Minister, but that's actually perhaps a little exaggeration. But anyway, and lastly, just if government changes here, for example, watch out for language. Language is incredibly powerful. So if Labor has caucus, Coalition has backbench, Labor spells PROGRAM, Coalition spells MME. It's all important. You have to understand their electorate, and I think by using the right language and the respectful, don't tell them how fabulous all these programs were under the last mob if it's a change of government. And you'll find that time kind of works its way out. And above all, put credits in the relationship bank early, because you're going to debit them over time.
Jane, question?
Yes, thank you. Lisa, at the end of your fabulous talk, you made what might have been a throwaway line that you're a fan of outsourcing policy. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing you don't mean because public servants aren't good at it. I'm guessing in the context of collaboration, there's something about an added value. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that and perhaps give us an example where that concept of outsourcing has actually added value.
Aha. Well, that's a great question. They're all good questions. Of course, we are extremely good at policy development and policy making. We're the best. No one else does it. Private sector doesn't do it. It's always interesting, isn't it, if there's a change of government, and you guys haven't had one for a while, but look at federally, and a whole bunch of programs come in from the opposition, what was the opposition into government, and they're actually not that well thought through. Why? Because they haven't had access to us. So if you have a change of government here, for example, you'll find some policies will need more work. And that's fine, they will welcome that. So we are the best at it. However, particularly in a world of social media and kind of democratic access to citizens everywhere, and customised service delivery that private sector offers, I think we have a responsibility to think, what do citizens care about? What's in the heart of the apprentice? What's the dream of the parent for their child at childcare? What's the hope of the teenage mum whose kids had to go into state care? What's her personal dream? Whereas it's all too easy, particularly at federal level, to think you're actually working for a university or a vocational education provider. You're working for people, you fund not to people at the end. So an example would be the creation of myschool.edu.au. A great piece of transparency, which was really hard to achieve because the teachers were frightened of league tables, educators were frightened, state ministers were against it, etc. Gillard just kept forging on. And But we actually involved as many people as we could, students, parents, etc. in what did students and parents want to know about their school. And of course we had mostly at our hand NAPLAN results, which is what forms the basis of my school. But we actually did go out and do that. Actually, just before I changed government, another example, I was working up a deal with Twitter where we were going to go out and seek views through Twitter on people's views about schooling and policy, but government changed it and it sort of became just wasn't the top of the pile. But there's another example. So think creatively about how you can do that. But your political masters have to be on site. It's high risk.
And risk is an interesting question. I had some questions around risk because you did mention it, and there was a couple of mentions of risk. And Irma, in fact, said you've got the go-ahead to go and take risks. You've heard it from her. But how do you actually, when you're working in a government department, and again I'm going back to that whole media cycle where many of you work with people, you deal with human lives, you deal with stories that are sexy in the media. How do you allow people to take risks when things can go wrong? And why is it that as public servants and as a government, people now don't say things go wrong?
Firstly, I think it's actually, my response is it's our perception of what is risk. So if we're not telling citizens, I'll give you an example, the Clovelly Park and contamination. I suspect the people at the end of the line were thinking, well, this is really risky and perhaps our minister won't like it or expose him. And so we assess that risk of saying nothing until, it gets to the point where you actually are having to deal with a crisis. So I think at the moment what
Documents
we
were
need is
leaked
better.
to the opposition, actually.
Well, however it was done. But if the citizen is at the heart of what we do, your biggest risk, I think, is not telling citizens.
Yeah.
And telling them up front and getting them involved in what the solution is. And the thing I've found through our 90-day projects, for instance, is we'll get the sticky complex problems where, whether it's criteria-led discharge or antenatal services in schools, it's stuff that agencies wanted to do but was too risky because either doctors didn't like it or you don't have that sort of service in a school. And what I actually found is by testing it and actually saying if it didn't work, we'll get out. So experimentation is a better way of actually doing it in the public service and going, there's nothing risky about this, the only risk was not doing anything. So I think it's how we define it. I think we are best placed, as Lisa said, for any government to advise them on what might be the best course of action, because we've seen it. You've got to back yourself and you've got to allow yourself to be a bit uncomfortable with some vulnerability around it. I've found that if you're really good at what you do and understand it, you'll know how to manoeuvre those risks, or you know when to stop because it's gone to that point and you've briefed up and the rest of it. The risk is not doing anything.
Paddy, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. There's risk and then there's calculated risk. Planning is fundamental to anything that you do. You don't have a light bulb moment and then just zoom off and do it. You think about it, you plan it, you talk to people, you involve the people concerned, both the people who will deliver but the people who will be delivered to. And you work out what the risks are and then how to mitigate them and how to control them. The other thing is always, in my opinion, in all projects that you do that are about change, is you always have a backup plan. So that people know that something isn't locked into concrete. So that you know that if it's, and you evaluate, you have evaluation built in fundamentally. So if it's not working, then you agree to change it. You are not blindly pursuing a goal and heading down a path when it's quite clearly obvious that it's not quite working. And you change it, you modify it, you evolve it, you continually improve.
Helen, does public policy often go wrong, or do you get it wrong? Is the policy often wrong and you don't know it's wrong until it's actually been implemented?
One of the things I say that elicits violent disagreement is that all policy fails, either because the context changes, or because it's bad policy, or because we don't have the systems or the people or whatever it is to implement it. So. That's the joy of public policy, is that you're always in a phase of renewal, and it's important that we recognise that, and it's absolutely important that we get the best advice from wherever that is in order to make the best public policy. And if that's from citizens, then that's where we should be getting it. I suppose I have two concerns. One is that I think often when people talk about public policy outsourcing, they mean give it to the big four consultancies, which I know is not what Lisa means. And we're doing a piece of work at the moment looking at think tanks, and one of the interesting things about that is just how, apart from anything else, and this isn't to do with the quality of anybody's work, but if you look at think tanks, one of the fascinating things is just how gendered, again using the metaphor of the bridge, how gendered that bridge is in terms of who's providing the advice and who are they providing it to. And that makes a big difference to public policy. And I guess the only other thing I would say, if I could, because you mentioned it, is I think one of the, and I really don't pretend at all that this is easy, but I think one of the real dilemmas we're in, wherever we are at the moment, is that media, the 24-hour media cycle, appears to drive everything.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that, and this is not necessarily a public service question, it's also a political question, but it does seem to me that, if we don't do what Irma and Paddy are talking about, if we don't act quickly and decisively and in a spirit of openness, then the media just comes in and takes over, and that does seem to be
And
what
they run the
happens.
story.
And they want the story, and if there isn't
they
a
run it,
story,
yeah.
they'll run with what they can find. So,
Yeah.
Sort of not saying anything, keeping a dignified silence, or just working out.
Well, it makes it worse because people that are reading the newspapers or listening to the radio, they think then that you're covering something
Yes,
up. And
exactly.
I believe that you should just tell the truth, and that we, the people, are actually big enough to understand the truth. And I sometimes find that disconnect befuddling. I don't get it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're fallen into the trap of assuming that citizens, which of course is all of us, are both stupid and very easily manipulated.
Some are.
So, you
Yeah.
said that, I didn't. But I think, the ambition should be that, again, it's back to the social contract. Citizens have responsibilities and obligations, and if we don't expect that of them, then we are just creating a space where you can make mischief and mayhem.
All four of you are senior leaders. I've just got a question from someone here who perhaps isn't yet but would like to be. How do you shine past and influence people from the bottom up? How do you stand out?
Do you want me to start? Oh, Lisa, yes.
You do need to market yourself to some extent. You do need to ensure that the higher ups can see the good work that you're doing. This is a gendered issue often. It can be, and I just say this as a generalisation. I imagine Helen can back it up with research. That women, when I mentor women, are much shyer of trying to put their achievements in front of the bosses. Secondly, other than showing your achievements upwards, which is really important, because people are so busy, they're not going to see them. Secondly, I always say have champions. Find people that will champion your cause at the next level up or the level above. And if you're in a place where you're poorly led and you're not learning, move. You need to be in a place where you can learn from your supervisors and learn from the job. And just get yourself perhaps into some corporate committees and places that you can be seen and championed from not just your own cone. Because the more people who will speak up and say, Lisa's all right, the more you're likely to be promoted.
Let's just go to our Public Service Commissioner, who can now talk freely about her own mentoring program, where, get this, she takes 10 women a year. 12 women a year, one for each month, like calendar girls.
They're here. Now they're here.
But
how many are here? I think there are a few. Yeah.
And you mentor them. I mean, that's an extraordinary thing to do. And your motivation for that was?
Well, I'll tell you the story.
Didn't have enough to do?
Every International Women's Day, a couple of messages. One is I completely agree with Lisa, but for me it was I was actually doing the thing that I really loved. So the purpose, personally, it's a personal story. Do what you really love and do it well, and someone will notice that. And that's how it happened for me. So there was a really great sponsor. But in terms of the mentoring program, when you actually have struggled, having children, being part-time, getting discriminated, there's a whole lot of things. Unconscious bias exists, yes, it does. That all happened to me. I never thought that I would actually get to this point, so it's a pleasant surprise. What I did realise is never forget where you came from. So when it was International Women's Day, I was talking to my daughter, who's in her mid-20s, and she said, well, why don't you do something different? Everyone keeps talking to you about how you got here, and they love hearing the story because it aligns to theirs and the rest of it. And I said, well, I'm going to do something different. Instead of going to speak somewhere about my story, I will actually offer out to 10 women, I've got 2 extras, basically a year of coaching or mentoring, and 4 sessions with me one-on-one, and then we have some group sessions around confidence, wherever it takes us. So that's what happened, because I wanted to actually give back, and I think that is aligned to my values. It's not because I wanted to get a bigger profile around it. I wanted to give back. It's a lot of my time, and I love doing it, and it's probably the most rewarding bit about my job right now, and there's a whole lot of other things that I do, but it is very rewarding to give back.
And, listening to what Lisa had to say, and then you with your program, is it something that all senior managers should actually be looking at doing in order to fill the chairs for the next round of leaders?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you happy, ladies, with Emma? Yeah, good. You can tell me. If you're not, can you tell me later? Or feed it back through the feedback loop. I'm just going to talk about collaboration now, and we've got some questions from the barrel. Perhaps I'll ask you, Paddy, what has been your greatest achievement from collaborating?
So, from SA Health's perspective, and I'm a tiny, tiny part of it, we have been, I believe, very, very successful in health in all policies. And people may not have any idea about that, but that's because it's now embedded across all agencies. It started a decade ago, and Carmel Williams, who's in the audience, was one of the key players in this. But it came from an idea. It came from a thinker in residence, and it was taken forward by first health and then the government of the day. And what it is it's about building health into all parts of what we do. And now it's a key platform in Adelaide's 30-year plan. It's built into department policies, whether it's been Department of Planning, Transport Infrastructure, Education, Environment, Water, Natural Resources, EPA, you name it, it's across the board. And we are now recognised, South Australia, and it often is the case, not recognised in your own place for your successes, but we are now recognised internationally and as a key founder in that area. And recently we have become, South Australia, not Australia, South Australia, has become a member of the Executive and Steering Committee for the Global Network in Health in All Policies supported by the WHO. And that's about actually taking health in all policies to less developed places so that transport, infrastructure, education all start to build health into their policies to build on and improve the social determinants of health, which are fundamental to healthy communities. So that's something that I think is one of the greatest examples of collaboration.
Thank you for that. Helen, what about examples of collaboration that's gone wrong, and what would you do differently?
You mean my examples of collaborations that got wrong,
or any that you know of, or your own? If you just want to get it out, if it's been sitting here for a while.
I've got categories of disasters I could talk about. So I think, all collaboration goes wrong at some point, just because it's such a difficult thing to do, and it defies technical specification and expertise and all of those things that we're used to relying on. The key thing is to be committed to learn from it and to know. And these ideas about having experimentation and really support systems that facilitate and enable learning, I think, are absolutely key to collaboration. Because if, and I should imagine, Paddy, the example that you've given, that just wasn't smooth sailing from idea to, you know, being part of this global network. You know, there are things that try to knock you off course. There are missteps that you make, but the key thing is to know how to learn, and also to have people like Paddy, to have champions who will stick with it, who will see the possibility, and will be prepared to stick with it and champion it even when it's difficult. Now, there are some things that are just complete disasters. There was there are very many of them, but and I won't pick any Australian ones, but there was a policy in the UK for some time from 2010 to 2014 of the big society. Now that was a complete disaster. For, you know, every which way you looked at it, it was terribly thought out policy. It was cost cutting dressed up as citizen empowerment. Millions of pounds were wasted on initiatives that either replicated things or just didn't work. And that was a case of, you know, there being a very strong ideological position that was being pushed. And people were just, you know, having to watch and, you know, navigate around the edges. Now, there aren't too many things that are like that. And, you know, I have absolutely no doubt there are people who will say it was a great success and, you know, give me all sorts of reasons why, but it wasn't. You know, there are standout examples like that. Most of our examples of collaboration are much more mundane. It's much more about recognizing that, yes, you have a great idea, but it is going to be really, really difficult, and at some point things are going to go wrong, and you need people in your corner who are going to help you pick yourself up and put it back on course. Because, as I said at the end, it is about endeavour ultimately, and that is the only thing that's constant about collaboration.
Just a couple of quick questions. Firstly, Irma, while I've got you, just around your mentoring program, do you have a framework for that that's freely available, just loading more work onto you for other people to access? You know, perhaps if they would like to think that they could mentor others, but they're not quite too sure how to do that?
Well, I do, thanks to my lovely team here on the... So I had thought bubbles, and I've done the mentoring for a while, but we have put a program together that's over the year and works with my schedule. Linda's got that, and I'm more than happy to sort of, anyone that's interested to come to the office, and we'll give you a bit of an overview of what occurs during that program. But I will insist, I guess, you'd have to make at least 4 sessions of an hour long over the year for 10 or 12 people, and give yourself during that time readings and things like that. So I can share what we're doing. I'm not saying it's best practice, but it's certainly, I think, working for the women that are being mentored through the program.
And so they can access that through your office?
Just through my office, and I'm happy. And we've got a little learning journal booklet that Linda's developed as well, which is fantastic, with some really inspirational quotes and things.
We could go on for hours with these Q&As. There's so many questions that we have for all of the panellists. I think I'll just conclude it though with one, because I'm looking out and seeing there's a lot of women in the audience, and I think this question would resonate with a lot of them. And this is not to exclude you blokes, I'm sure you're in the same position, but this is for you, Lisa. It says you've had an amazing career. What sacrifices have you had to achieve that and to walk the highest corridors of power in Canberra? Has it been all work, or has there been a life as well? And how do you try and strike that elusive work-life balance?
Yep. Well, it is incredibly important to do so, of course. So I did find, when I got the sort of mega department, I called it the job that ate my life. And the only people I could really keep up with were my partner and my mum, and even mum, who moved to Canberra from Adelaide by then, I didn't see enough of. And everything else sort of went by the board for a while. So there, you know...
Ebbs and flows.
There are ebbs and flows. Now, the thing is, the flows can be like that. The ebbs you've got to make the most of. And there's things that I do, and I would never ever give up, no matter how hard the job is, for a while. I do yoga, I keep fit, and I always switch off when I get home. And this just started, like, after 20 years, when I realised, my goodness, I'm a career public servant. And then sometime into my secretaryship, I found I actually was switching off as soon as I got home. It's awesome. Now, sometimes that would get interrupted, but and then what would happen would be, if I was really worrying about something, like giving a big speech to everybody live, say, the next day, or whatever, or some dreadful political problem, I just would tend to wake up earlier. So there's kind of personal strategies that almost kind of grow on you. But it is incredibly important. And And you always, as a leader, I was always absolutely, no matter what I was doing, I was absolutely impeccable at never ever rewarding hours worked. Never ever psychically reward. So I would never use, even though of course I completely respected the poor finance team that had to work every weekend leading up to a Commonwealth budget. But I would never go to them and say, thank you so much for working every weekend leading up to the Commonwealth budget, because that's what I'd be rewarding, and of course that's not right. It's unbalanced. If they could have done that job without working any weekends at all, wouldn't that have been fantastic? That would have been better. The reward is, thank you so much for working so hard, going above and beyond the call to achieve this federal budget. And be really careful about the language you use and never reward the wrong thing. I tried never to send emails on at least Sundays and maybe both days if I could. Not to have meetings before 9:15 or 9:30 for childcare drop-off reasons and after, say, starting at 5 or thereabouts. Just think about it. And for me, you don't do it if it's not a privilege and honour to do it. And of course I loved it, so it was fine. And it got easier, but if you've got to be a great delegator. I do master classes in delegation. I'm just great at getting other people to do work. And you know what it's like. Isn't it awful to have a micromanager who never tells you what they're doing and does all the work themselves as your boss? Like, that's daft. And if I'd tried to do that, I would have died. And same with all the leaders here. That's nuts. And disempowering. So you've got to be a master delegator.
I think all of us want to come and work for you, Lisa, in some capacity. Ladies and gents, can we put our hands together for our speakers?
I would like to give a vote of thanks to Lisa, Helen and Irma. I'd also like to thank Kira Bain for her wonderful acknowledgement of country, and also acknowledge that we meet on that Kaurna land and we respect their relationship with country and their elders past and present. So Lisa, yes, absolutely inspiring and yet so practical. The practical solutions are what we all need in our daily lives about how to take them forward. The word culturalist I hadn't heard before, but that's so true. Culture over structure are so important. As you said, a good culture will beat a bad structure any day, but a bad culture won't beat a good structure. So really, thank you. Also understanding who you are and who you work with, and actually getting into their heads and working out how they work, and therefore how you can help them to achieve more is wonderful advice. Helen, you talked a lot about collaboration, but especially emphasised the importance of why and to what purpose. And that's really fundamental. And if you don't have a why or what purpose, there's not really a huge amount of point. But also other important elements that are so important for collaboration: capability and expertise, communication, and in fact I hope that has come across to everyone. Communication, 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 so important. Empathy, that's getting into the people you're with's heads and understanding where they're coming from. And that will also be the people who you're delivering to, whether they be politicians, whether they be the community, whether they be the colleagues, whether they to be other departments. Negotiation, working out how to be a good negotiator. Diversity, absolutely fundamental. The old adage about you want people inside the tent urinating out, perhaps not that's the word, rather than outside the tent urinating in. Really important. Also learning and learning to fail and endeavour, working hard. Irma's passion for the public sector was clearly apparent, really fundamental, and her energy and enthusiasm and dedication to the public sector and helping us all learn how to be better public servants and how to build a better public service was fantastic. The other thing is her encouragement for all of us to be proud of who we are as public servants and what we do. To all of you, thank you for coming. It's wonderful to see so many people here who are interested in these topics of collaboration and leadership. And I know that we have future leaders in the audience, and that over time these words, but others, and mentorship will come to fruition, and we'll see you leading departments here in South Australia, perhaps nationally, perhaps companies, perhaps international organisations. But I know that some of you will be in those roles. So just a few words about the Department for Health and Ageing. We see collaboration as fundamental. Right from the clinical teams delivering clinical care, no one person delivers all the care a patient needs in any healthcare system, whether it be at primary care level, whether it be in a hospital, whether it be in a major hospital, a major internationally recognised hospital such as our wonderful Royal Adelaide Hospital. We rely heavily on collaboration at those micro levels, but also on partnerships. And that's really fundamental to where the Department for Health goes, and is really important. As I mentioned, the health in all policies aspect has been fundamental in helping to understand and help others understand that the social determinants of health, education, infrastructure, good living conditions, healthy, good food, exercise, all of those things are actually fundamental to healthy communities. And out of healthy communities, we have a better, thriving and more economically thriving society. So the health in all policies has been, I believe, one of our greatest successes, and often isn't understood now even by public servants, because there has been a decade of history there, but it is now embedded. Also, our Public Health Act, which was developed and rewritten after Health in All Policies and was promulgated in 2011, actually builds partnerships and collaboration into it. And so Section 12 has the partnership principle actually in legislation. Now, you can't legislate to collaborate or partner, but what you can legislate is actively considering that as part of the process. And so we have been developing public health partnerships. Now, it's about public health, so not so much the hospital, although collaboration, as I say, is fundamental, but it's across governments, it's across non-government organisations, it's across local government, it's a variety of organisations. And that's about increasing the capacity of everyone to work on building a healthier community and healthier society. And we're very keen to work with all agencies. So we're talking now with a whole variety of new players. Some successes have been our relationships with Environment, Water, National Resources, and that goes to the healthy parks and a variety of other things. We have a fantastic relationship with Safer Kids SA about improving safety of a whole variety of things, but most recently button batteries. And one of the other great successes has been our Healthy Workers program. Healthy Workers is focused with Safe Work SA on not just safe work, but healthy work, and moving towards workplaces being healthier, not just safer. And that's now being taken up by workplaces, both public and private, to show that there's economic benefits in that. So I think these sessions run through the Office of the Public Sector and their Leadership Academy are fantastic, and I've really enjoyed being here. I've learnt a lot, and I hope you have too. So thank you.